This is cool.
Back when Super Mario 64 came out, it kinda became the first law of video games that every single game must at least try being 3D. Zelda went 3D and it was beautiful. Metal Gear went 3D, that was crazy. Donkey Kong went 3D. Metroid went 3D. Earthworm Jim went 3D. 3D Sonic? That sounds like a terrible idea. I'm just kidding. Then the year 2000 rolls around, and there's somebody we haven't heard from in a hot minute, and it's Kirby. He's about to get his next big game on the Nintendo 64. After all these years and all this time, it was finally Kirby's turn to go 3D.
No.
Kirby 64 and the Crystal Shards is a game with 3D graphics but still operates entirely on a 2D level. It's still a phenomenal game, mind you. It might honestly be my favorite game in the series purely because the copyability is so damn cool, and you can play as a refrigerator. But even with the addition of all that awesome shit, it still begs the question of why didn't they put Kirby in 3D yet? Over the decades, Kirby would continue to go strong, but was still sticking with the same formula and avoiding 3D, and after Star Allies, which came under some scrutiny for not shaking it up enough, it seemed like the perfect time to look at Kirby and go, okay, what have we not tried yet? And then 3D Kirby gets announced last September, and I'm like, oh. I feel like the idea of 3D Kirby had to have been on the table for a very long time. Every Kirby game tried to add some new gimmicks and shake up the formula a little bit, while still being mostly faithful to the basic Kirby properties, which is something that I greatly appreciated. So much so that I made a whole video about it. Compared to things like Paper Mario, where they'll just uproot everything people liked about the game and make it fundamentally different and often inferior, at least in my opinion. But unlike Paper Mario, where there were two classic style games and then they just started doing weirdo shit, Kirby had at least 10 games that were just Kirby games but with a slightly different spice, so at that point it was a little easier to be open to a new direction. Right when you start moving, it's already apparent that they did not half-ass this game. Kirby has all his moves from the other games like the breath and the inhale and the slide move, but he's also got this new dodge roll thing. This thing is badass. Look at him go. You get this sick slow motion thing whenever you dodge an attack at the right moment. You'll see this a lot in Forgotten Land, where every single part of the game is made to look visually appealing, even where it's not absolutely necessary. Why does Kirby, who weighs less than a mechanical pencil, need a floaty ring to float in the water? Who cares? It's cute. Look at him. And look at this, the bombs get floaty rings too. Kirby is famous for always being excellent on the eyes, even though the games were never hyper-realistic in nature with 3090s and Nitro SSDs and NVIDIA physics-driven horse testicles. They've always managed to be some of the most appealing-looking games on whatever hardware they're on. There's all kinds of background details, the characters are so expressive and lively, some of the games look like goddamn paintings, dude. There's a lot of that going around lately. This has been true since the NES days, and it remains especially true in Forgotten Land. Like Elden Ring, it's another recent example of how you don't need photorealism if the art direction is on point. And again, Kirby's environments and visual details tell a story without words, a story that is hidden completely in the background. Again, just like Elden Ring. What I'm saying is, Kirby is basically just Elden Ring. I mean, look, they gave DDD the Hoarfrost Stomp. I mean, literally just straight up the Hoarfrost Stomp. They even put K-Lid in there. And the dodge roll. As always, the highlight of Kirby is the copy abilities. You got all these cool moves you remember from the classic games with a bunch of new stuff on top of that. I mean, they gave Kirby a goddamn gun. Two, actually, if you upgrade it. Yeah, that's right, you can actually upgrade your attacks more than once in this game to make them all absolutely broken. And in order to do that, you need to complete all these treasure road challenges, which are also really fun. The copy abilities are badass, especially when you upgrade them, but even besides their combat effectiveness, they just look really cool. You can have fun in Forgotten Land just by attacking nothing and seeing all the crazy animations. Not to mention the hilarious mouthful modes. I mean, look at this, you can be a vending machine. It's not exactly the same as a fridge, but I guess it's still pretty neat. That's the thing about Kirby, these games have always been very laid back and casual, but because the presentation is as good as it is, you still feel like a badass even when you're not doing something particularly difficult. You just eat a guy and then you're slicing guys' heads off with a big ass sword. That must be a very weird existence that Kirby leads, where sometimes he eats something and turns into some shit, and other times he just doesn't. Were there other Kirbys before him that taste tested everything to determine which things would transform him and which things wouldn't? Like cavemen dying from eating poisonous berries? Then of course you got the enemy designs. You got a lot of familiar faces returning, in addition to some new enemies and bosses you never seen before. DDD looks awesome. They made this cat lady with big ass thighs. What is this doing in a Kirby game? Kirby has always been an easy ass game, and Forgotten Land is no exception. For those of you who might be disappointed to hear that, it's worth noting that they added an easy mode. Yeah. Now depending who you ask, Kirby's low difficulty might be worthy of criticism and scrutiny, but I just got done beating Elden Ring, so my gamer skills were already completely tapped out at this point. As such, bitch-ass Kirby was a much-needed change of pace in my book. Although beating the game is largely easy to do, the optional objectives add a lot more challenge and encourage deeper engagement with the game's world, like looking for wanted posters and taking them down like Assassin's Creed, or bringing the duckies to their mom like Assassin's Creed. This is kinda like Forgotten Land's version of secret treasure chests and crystal shards. From a narrative perspective, Kirby's stories are deceptively simplistic and child-friendly, but the more you play, the more you start to realize the potentially sinister nature of the world lying underneath. Navigating this empty, abandoned human settlement populated with enough natural overgrowth and creatures alluding to a society that has been dead for probably 100 years now. As a capable yet naive creature who can't even begin to comprehend the horrors they're forced to navigate. It's a lot like Pikmin in that respect. The apocalypse setting has been a favorite go-to for video games and even Kirby itself a few times. The difference is where these other games are depressing and pessimistic and rated M, Kirby looks the post-apocalyptic void dead in the eyes and says, "Yeah, okay, society might have collapsed, but I still got my cake, so who's the real loser here?" It's kinda uplifting that way. I don't want to spoil way too much, but just rest assured that the final boss has 18 phases and isn't actually the final boss because there's an entire big-ass chapter after you beat the game and get the true ending. This is a Kirby game after all. And that's one of the things that pushes Forgotten Land over the edge. It's a very complete and dense game. There's a lot of supplementary content in addition to the base game. You got all kinds of secrets. You got these little Shenmue figurines that you can find and buy. You can catch a big ass fish. There's all these mini games that I'm never gonna play. And as you save the Waddle Dees, the city becomes more populous and they open more stores and shops so you can buy things that help you out on your adventure. There's an excellent sense of progression that way. It's like you're rebuilding a town. Now, when I envisioned a 3D Kirby game all these years, I was picturing something a lot more sandboxy and open, like Mario 64 or Odyssey. So I must confess that I was a little bit disappointed that Kirby in the Forgotten Land chose the 3D world approach. This is not the type of platformer where you can pursue objectives in whatever order you want, or go anywhere you want to go, and rotate the fucking camera. It's still a very linear and get to the end kind of game, but that extra dimension is still more than enough to give Kirby that long needed gust of fresh air. Although the levels are kinda like dioramas at a passing glance, there's a level of detail and interactivity with the environment that makes it more immersive and engaging to just exist in that world. But while I'm talking about things that pissed me off, I do want to talk about something else that bothered me, and that is the optional objectives. Like I said before, these objectives are mostly really cool, until you get to the ones that are like, beat this boss without getting hit once. I hate these ones not because they're challenging, but because of how annoying it is to get back to the point of giving it another shake. Fighting a boss, oop, got hit, exit level, load screen, re-enter level, load screen, walk all the way back, now you can fight him again. It's even worse when it's a mini-boss that's in the middle of a level because it's like, oops, got hit, now I gotta restart the whole level and walk all the way back to the boss fight to give it another shot. I mean, either that or spend 3 minutes sitting there waiting for the boss to kill you so you reload at the checkpoint, which is slightly faster but still feels like an eternity. If you want to say that I'm nitpicking, you're not wrong. But you see, to my way of thinking, if the worst thing you can say about a game is a nitpick, it's really the highest compliment you can give, because it means they pretty much nailed everything else. And that's the thing. When you have a game as good as this, the bad parts, even as little as they are, stick out like a sore thumb. Like Elden Ring and its stupid ass horse controls. Kirby and the Forgotten Land is not quite what I had in mind when I imagined a 3D Kirby game for all these years, but it's still a remarkable splash of rejuvenating video game water juice stuff. I don't know where I was going with that, but the point is, it's refreshing. It's a new game in a series that has needed a spark of inspiration for a good while now, and it came out at the perfect time, just a month after Elden Ring caused everyone to have a stroke. Cause now we can just kick back and play some bitch-ass Kirby. If you're at all on the fence about this game, I'd maybe recommend buying a second-hand copy. Right now it's a full-priced game, and there's been a lot of discussion about the $60 game in recent years, so that's a way to go if my glowing review didn't sell you on it completely. This could honestly be my favorite Kirby game, but it's unfortunately held back by the fact that vending machines are not as cool as refrigerators.